Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, February the 2nd, 2026. So we've got this release of the Epstein files, and I know I've talked about Epstein before, but I think it's time to look at him again. And, one does wonder, who is the big winner of this file release, when we look at its impact. And I would have said there is one answer to that question. And clearly the big winner is Jeffrey Epstein himself. And I think that we have to see Jeffrey Epstein as something, maybe a something, not necessarily a someone, something that just persists. And, we shouldn't necessarily see him just as an ordinary human being. I mean, I know that's kind of a bit dramatic, but clearly he had a purpose. We might not like the fact that he had a purpose, and I think this is maybe reflected by what is going on in astrology. Yeah, it raises some sort of worrying moral questions. And at the end of this video, I will be talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and I will sort of be speculating about what is going on, and I'll be looking at some of his friends, or at least some of his connections, because some quite famous people have been described in a way that is pretty bad. But anyway, before I talk about Epstein, I will consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Monday, February the 2nd, 2026. So here is the chart for today, set for noon New York time, Monday, February the 2nd, 2026. So as far as what is going on here, by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. We have the moon still in Leo. So you can see that moon at noon New York time is at 24 degrees and 3 minutes of the sign. And the moon stays in Leo until 3:21 a.m. tomorrow London time. So that means that if you are in New York or the Eastern Standard Time, then the moon will move into Virgo late this evening. If you're in California, it will move into Virgo early evening. So we are moving, right towards the end of the sign. And as far as what the moon is doing, well, we've just had the full moon, so you could say that it's a continuation of this full moon. So this full moon was 13 degrees? Was it 13 degrees 4 minutes Leo? And the moon, of course, when the full moon was exact, was making an opposition to the sun, and now it's opposition Venus, it's opposition Mercury, it's making a trine to Chiron as well, and so it's activating all those Aquarius planets, and additionally it makes a square to Uranus. I think that moon square Uranus could be more important than usual because Uranus is about to go direct. I think it's on Wednesday that Uranus goes stationary direct, comes to a standstill fairly close to Algol, that fixed star, the demon's head, Medusa, that some people get worried about. So there is an Algol feel to the moon, and it certainly seems that things are falling apart to some extent, and it's not just about Epstein. We don't know what Trump is going to do, for example, in Iran. Of course, probably Trump is now thinking that he has to divert attention from the Epstein files, so he has to do something else, and he's got sort of concerns about the government shutdown. So yeah, it's all a bit crazy. And so that's the moon in Leo, and the sun. The sun is at 13 degrees 51 Aquarius. It is making it's making a semi-square to Saturn. So the semi-square to Saturn, it's not great. Sun in Aquarius, Sun is ruled by Saturn. It's semi-square Saturn. So there is a certain, there's a certain downer to the day, isn't it? I mean, things just don't move quite as fast as we'd like them to. I mean, it's just, we've got the moon oppositions, and then we've got the sun square Saturn, and the sun is not particularly well placed in Aquarius, and it's in its detriment. So it might be a heavy day, and it might be a day where it's difficult to get things done. And additionally, there could be a certain amount of worry. People are worried about things because the moon, having made that semi-square to Saturn, that semi-square to Saturn, will move on and will make a semi-square to Neptune. So it's not the moon. I mean the Sun, having made a semi-square to Saturn, will move on to the semi-square of Neptune. So that's not great. I mean, I'd love to be more optimistic, but I don't think it's going to be a great day. I really don't. And I know I'm supposed to tell you how wonderful things are, but we've got to be honest. Those lunar aspects, the moon is when it makes the opposition to when it makes the opposition to Mercury. Remember, Mercury is a traditional planet, and so when it makes the opposition to Mercury, the moon is void of course. It's not going anywhere. Now, some would say the moon is not void of course because it's making a square to Uranus, but as far as I'm concerned, Uranus is a discovered planet, and when you're working out whether or not the moon is void of course, you don't count Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So that's the picture today, set for noon New York, and turning to Sydney, Australia. The moon will of course be earlier in the sign. If you are in Sydney, Australia, then the full moon that was sort of late on Saturday into Monday is going to be particularly strong, because if you're in Australia and New Zealand, you are ahead in the clock. So as far as your clock is concerned, things do seem to happen later. I mean, it's all time. I mean, I think ideally we'd all be on the same time zone. I think we just manage, even if I don't know, even if at 3 in the afternoon it's the middle of the night. I just think we all should be on the same time zone. I just think it would make things a lot simpler. It would certainly make things a lot simpler for me. But anyway, as far as Sydney, Australia is concerned, it's all about the full moon. I mean, I talked about the full moon yesterday in my video for the weekend, and so perhaps what I was saying for the weekend, applies if you are in Australia and New Zealand for today. Again, that's the problem of trying to do these forecasts for a global audience. And so, full moon, it might be the time where you do feel that things are becoming clear. The truth is in front of you, if you choose to accept it. So that's a big difference. And so maybe there's quite a substantial difference there in terms of experience. You're really feeling that new moon, and the new moon is making a semi-square sesquiquadrate to Saturn. So yes, if you're in Australia, New Zealand, like everyone, it may be quite a heavy day, but also quite a revealing day where you sort of see things, for what they really are. And then there is the heliocentric view, putting the sun at the center of the solar system, and we still have Mars conjunct Pluto. It's pretty close, less than a degree apart. So everything I've been saying about the Mars-Pluto conjunction continues to apply. There may be a sense that we're trying to really sort of assert ourselves, or some of us are. We want to be noticed, and we might be really desperate to get noticed. I mean, that might be very important to us. Additionally, we have got Venus about to go into heliocentric Pisces. You can see Venus 29 Aquarius. So when it goes into heliocentric Pisces, it will make a square to Uranus. I don't want to say too much about that aspect. I don't think it's going to be particularly important, but it might be a time when things are sort of stirred up, where people might not behave quite as one expects. But I mean, we are living in difficult times, so you can't expect people to just follow their normal scripts. They might kind of go off script. Indeed, we might go off script, and perhaps that's a good thing. It's if we do live our lives according to scripts so often, and to do something different, to behave differently, particularly in a social situation, might sometimes be a good thing to do, because it shakes things up. So anyway, that's the broad astrological picture, and now it's time to look at things from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Monday, February the 2nd, 2026. Aries, you feel that you would really like to do something. You'd like to do something that is constructive and is also an essential part of who you are. Indeed, you might be quite determined to do things your way, and that is certainly to be expected. You being an Aries, you have a strong belief in yourself, and you have a belief in your capacity to create waves. To move things on, and you don't want to be overly influenced by other people and their whims, and not just their whims, but their hesitations. People can be very slower than you, and you just want to get on with it. But the problem is, the moon is in Leo. I mean, it's great that the moon is in Leo. The moon is in a fire sign. At least we've got one planet in a fire sign. But you just might feel that you're not getting enough support. And, however hard you try, other people may be just dragging their feet. They just don't see things in quite the way you do. And that might be annoying. And how annoying perhaps depends on what kind of Aries you are. If you're the kind of Aries that regards other people as being important, if you're a very socially orientated Aries, not every Aries is socially orientated, but if you are, then it could be particularly frustrating, because I just don't think you're going to get a lot of support, and there may even be resistance. We've just had a full moon, and the moon is making oppositions to Venus and Mercury, and so as far as you're concerned, it just may be difficult to get anything done. On the other hand, if you do things your way, then that really isn't quite so bad. I think if you take responsibility for everything, you take the assumption that you're not going to get any help, then I think that things should be okay, and you actually have the capacity to really make a lot of progress, and you can really focus on your desires. I mean, it's good to have desires. Desires, well, you don't want to get obsessive about them, and you have to perhaps think, what is a desire all about? It shouldn't just be about anything short term. It should be perhaps about your wishes, how you would like things to be. And if you would like things to be in a particular way, then yes, I think that really can happen. And if you hold firm and you hold your ground, and you don't worry too much about what other people are saying or doing, then I think that it can be a relatively successful day. But I must emphasize, you must not assume that everyone is going to agree with you. You mustn't assume that you're going to take people with you. You might not be able to, and so that it could be that the right approach is to regard yourself as being an individual. And one other thing, we've got the moon in Leo making a trine to Chiron. Chiron, of course, a relatively slow-moving body. It's still in Aries, and with that moon trine Chiron, you have the opportunity, I think, to do something that is very individualistic, and it won't be too difficult. But again, you shouldn't be worried about what other people are saying or doing. It's how you do it. Now, you could in fact go on to say that there's a larger formation going on. The moon is opposition Venus and Mercury. So the moon opposition Venus and Mercury does represent some of the tension I've been talking about, the fact that you are perhaps not getting the support you feel you deserve. But then the moon moves on to that trine of Chiron, and so perhaps Chiron is the answer in this situation. And as I keep saying, Chiron is the individual, Chiron does things its way, and it can be disruptive, but that is the nature of Chiron. And if you felt that you just had to give in, well, that would be one big wound, wouldn't it? You would feel wounded, but there's no need to feel wounded. I think that you have to take the Chiron symbolism and make the most of it, and it is about being the rebel, being the disruptor, but also realizing that you have got your own unique path, and that unique path in the final analysis is not dependent on other people's whims. Taurus. The moon is continuing to move through a Leo, and with the moon moving through a Leo, you would be inclined to focus on what matters to you. What is the important material, and what you need to focus on. And I think you would prefer to sort of look down rather than up. You don't really want to know what's going on in the world out there. I mean, it might be very exciting, it might be very interesting, but you'd rather focus on what you know and trust. With the moon moving through Leo, and it can be a lonely path, perhaps too lonely, because that things are happening, things are happening out there, and you might believe that it can all be avoided, but probably not. The moon in Leo, well, we've just had a full moon, and I talked about the full moon when I was doing the horoscope for the weekend, and I think what I said to Taurus about, Ted said to you about the full moon, was that it's really about having to deal with things going on out there, things that you don't want to pay attention to. You'd rather it wasn't happening, but it is happening, and so you might be annoyed slightly, but it just goes on. And today we've got the moon making opposition aspects to Venus and Mercury, and the moon making those oppositions. It can be disturbing. Moon opposition Venus. That moon opposition Venus almost says that you kind of are inclined to be in two places at one time. You want to intrinsically be somewhere safe, but you also know in your heart of hearts you need to be really in the middle of things, and you need to be someone who is in a coordinating position, is able to take control, is able perhaps to take a position of leadership, but you're not in the mood for leadership at the moment. You would just rather be doing something else. Now, fortunately, the moon does not stay in Leo for very long. I mean, if you're in the Americas, then this evening it will move out of Leo and move into Virgo, and if you're elsewhere, then tomorrow it will be in Virgo. So there is going to be a change, and for the moment, you just might have to deal with, a certain sense of irritation, just having to deal with things, and things that you don't necessarily want to deal with. You have to hold firm, but you can't be seen to be too stubborn. Now that does sound a little bit negative. I mean, it's not the only thing going on. I think that, at the moment, in spite of everything, you are quite sensitive. You know what's going on around you. You can feel what's going on around you. You know what people are thinking. You know what people are feeling, and you just have a natural understanding of other people, and that understanding can be useful. At least you know what other people are expecting, and you're unlikely to make big social mistakes, but sometimes it can just be a little bit sort of overwhelming, having to deal with another person's set of emotions. And that is the problem. That's the issue when you get close to someone, when you feel a sense of unity. Well, the trouble about unity is that boundaries get broken up, and this goes back to my original point that at the moment Taurians, they do to a great extent want to look after their own space, but you do have the capacity to relate if you so wish, and in fact I think you can relate on quite a powerful level. Again, it's probably up to you, and as soon as you get close to someone, again, it's your choice, but as soon as you get close to someone, you start to realize that you are picking up a lot of information, and maybe it's too much information, and what you do with that information, well, that's up to you. Gemini, you certainly have at the moment, quite a lot to say for yourself. You're a Gemini, and at the moment, Gemini, there are things on your mind, things you want to talk about, and it's not always easy, though. I mean, although you try your hardest, you perhaps are quite good at starting conversations. Or at least you feel you're good at starting conversations. It may just be that not everyone is in the mood, and having to deal with other people and their ideas and your ideas, may not always be great, and it's just possible that you say things that don't necessarily have the impact you were expecting. Don't forget that the moon is making an opposition to Mercury. It's also making a square to Uranus. So you might say that we've got a T-square going on with Moon opposition Mercury, and then Uranus on the T, and that really seems to be the case, that you just feel in the end that you have to do something, you have to say something, and then you have to deal with the consequences. So if you really feel that something needs to be said, well, maybe it should be kept to yourself. I mean, that is a possibility. Additionally, Gemini, you are very aware of what is happening in the world. You're aware of how things perhaps are going wrong across the board. Now, all of us, we follow the news. We try to follow the news. I mean, I'm a Gemini. I mean, I've got my sun in Gemini, and I try to sort of always keep abreast of what's going on. I don't always succeed. I mean, I'm going to talk about the Epstein files later in this video. Do I know a great deal about the Epstein files? Well, not really. Perhaps I should have done a bit more research before making this video, but I do try. And at the moment, Gemini, there may be deep down a sense of tragedy. Yeah, not your tragedy, just the world's tragedy, everyone's tragedy, other people's tragedy. Tragedies happening everywhere, perhaps in every continent. You're just very aware of that. And that means that there is a sense, an overwhelming sense of heaviness here, particularly if you're the kind of Gemini that follows the news. And, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's good to know that things are going from bad to worse in some parts of the world, and that some people, they have their tragic destinies that they are drawn into, and it's not just one person having a tragic destiny. It's a lot of people. Tragic destiny. That's a word two words that Reinhold Ebertin uses in his book Combination of Stellar Influences, and it just does seem like that things are not going to get better. Now, that's your perceptions. Right now, those perceptions are not going to last forever. And in general, Gemini, I don't think it's going to be a bad day. I just think that not everyone is going to appreciate what you have to say. I mean, you may just feel you don't quite know at what level to speak. Do you speak at a sort of a trivial level, or do you go for a sort of a higher order type of conversation where you're thinking about broad concepts and, you try, you struggle. I mean, maybe you will be successful. Maybe you'll find the right words, but it's going to be hard work, and it just might be, Gemini, that the easiest way to manage the day's challenges is just to keep it on a fairly light level. If you get into things too heavily, then that might not be manageable. And so if you want a quiet day, well, I think you can have a quiet day, but it will require some discipline. I mean, you're just going to have to stay out of trouble, and you're going to, be very careful, what you say and what subjects you bring up. Cancer. I'd love to be optimistic about today, but I think that today is not necessarily going to be great, and I'm not really saying anything personal here. I'm not really talking about cancers specifically, but I think that you in particular, you're still feeling the full moon. It's still there. In fact, if you're in Australia and New Zealand, the full moon is completely with you. I mean, the full moon is today, in the middle of the day. If you're in the Americas, okay, it might be yesterday, but it's still a major feature of what is going on. And so you feel the full moon. You feel that things are in a process of change, and maybe Cancer, you're starting to realize things that you hadn't realized before, and it's all becoming, very obvious. And today, like the weekend, there could be some focus on money. You may be starting to see money for what it is, and realizing its fundamental limitations, or at least realizing perhaps the limitations of your current financial situation. And that's not a bad thing, because it's all about realization, and you perhaps seeing what needs to be done. And also, if you're in a situation where you're losing money, or perhaps other people are not being very careful with money, it just becomes obvious. It becomes very, very obvious. You might not want to know the truth, but full moons are about the truth. And if you're honest with yourself, and you're also honest with other people, then I think that you can be in a position to benefit from a situation. And at the same time, there may be things that maybe need to be said. I mean, today we've got the moon making oppositions to Venus, opposition to Mercury. Moon opposition Mercury can be quite verbal, and the things you say could be quite intense. And if you want to be critical, I certainly think you can be. I mean, Cancers are very good at being critical, very good at giving people a piece of their minds. So you can do that. But of course, you have to also consider the consequences and ask yourself, is it really worth the effort? I mean, it might not be. You have to ask yourself, can you create meaningful change by talking about, particular subjects? Yeah, is it worth it? And it may be the case that it's not worth it. So you do bear that in mind. And so that's perhaps why I'm not convinced it's going to be a particularly easy day, not a day where you're going to be especially content. And then we've got the moon making a square to Uranus. Now, moon square Uranus, it's not an aspect that's particularly unusual, but it's the moon. The moon is your ruler. And Uranus is right now stationary direct. So Uranus overall is more powerful than usual. And this might mean that, with this full moon taking place just after, with this moon square Uranus taking place just after a full moon, that there is a moment of truth, a moment of realization where things just suddenly are obvious. And that realization, once it happens, it can't really be taken back. It might be a realization about money. It might be a realization about other people. It might be a realization about other people and money, how other people are behaving with money. It might well be this moon square Uranus. That is a way of looking at it, but it's a fast-moving aspect. I don't want to be too dramatic about it. And the moon does move into Virgo eventually. Now the moon will move into Virgo if you're in the Americas, this evening. If you, certainly in the United States, but if you're in Europe, Europe and elsewhere, Australia or Asia or whatever, the moon won't move into Virgo until Wednesday. But the moon moving into Virgo overall is a good thing. It's going to just make things easier, and you'll be just over the whole sort of full moon thing, because I think it has been quite a difficult full moon for you, and probably it's been a difficult full moon for maybe everyone else. So it's certainly not going to get any worse, and the influence of the full moon, well, it is weakening. So if today seems a bit stressful, don't worry. I think that tomorrow, Tuesday, is going to be easier. Leo, I'm kind of being a bundle of laughs at the moment. In the sense that I'm not being very enthusiastic about what's happening today. I'm supposed to be enthusiastic, aren't I? I'm supposed to tell you how wonderful things are, and perhaps you take the view that if I say that things are wonderful, well, they are going to be wonderful. I'd love to have that view, but I don't regard myself as being a magician. I can't change anything, and I don't think that suggestion, psychological suggestion, telling you that everything is going to be wonderful is going to make things wonderful. Maybe I just don't have those kind of powers. I'm not a great hypnotist. But what am I thinking about? Well, I'm thinking, the moon is in Leo. There is something good to say about today. The moon is in your sign. So with the moon in your sign, that does mean that you have the capacity to broadly understand what is happening. I don't think you're going to feel alien. I think that the moon is in a fire sign. Okay, that's great. But the moon does make a few aspects. The moon, moon is making an opposition to Venus. It's making an opposition to Mercury. Remember, Venus and Mercury are in Aquarius, your opposite sign. And the moon is also making a square to Uranus. And so all of those aspects just may create problems. It's not necessarily that they're going to be huge problems, but just when dealing with people, there's just a bit of friction. And getting the words out can be a problem, because you've got moon opposition Mercury. Moon and Mercury, they are the two communication planets. The moon represents sort of emotional communication. Mercury is more about sort of verbal communication. And, when they're opposite one another, there's just a sense of uneasiness. And the words might come out right, but how are they going to be interpreted? So, as far as relationships are concerned, you already had the full moon. In fact, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, the full moon is exact today. So the full moon makes things clear, things are obvious, but then there is the potential of a clash, of a disagreement, or just seeing that perhaps another person is very different from you. Additionally, we've got the sun making a semisquare to Saturn. So the sun at 14 Aquarius is making a semisquare to Saturn, 28, 29 Pisces. And so that says something about the way you express yourself. Also, it says something about you and other people. And I think that sun semisquare Saturn, I'd love to say it was a great aspect, but I don't think it is. I think that you might find that certain people are just difficult. They're not particularly sympathetic. They're not particularly supportive. And, if you're in a relationship, as I've already suggested, you're going to be very aware of how you and another person differ. You are different. You see things in different ways, which is good. Vive la différence and all that. But that difference, could be particularly clear, right now. And so, given all that, Leo, I would possibly advise you to stay away from other people. I mean, don't get too close to them. I'm not saying you have to be a hermit or to completely isolate yourself, but you don't want to be in a situation where you're spending, too much time with another person, because, that could get you down. It could get them down as well. I mean, it's not just a one-way process. There may be something about you that is irritating. So, in terms of your various relationships, I would just not stay in one place for too long, and just be aware of how things could become difficult, but also just be aware. And being aware, might be enough. Now, there is an aspect going on today which I haven't really mentioned so far, and that is there's actually a grand trine today. I haven't really talked about this grand trine. I just sort of clicked that it's there, and it's a short-lived grand trine. But you've got Moon trine Chiron, but you've also got Moon trine. Looks as if you've got Moon trine true Black Moon Lilith. I mean, by the way, I think that people have mentioned, why is my Black Moon Lilith all over the place? And I think the problem about Black Moon Lilith is that Black Moon Lilith. There are two Black Moon Liliths. There's a mean Black Moon Lilith and there's a true Black Moon Lilith. And it seems that most people use mean Black Moon Lilith, and it's much easier to find the position of mean Black Moon Lilith than true Black Moon Lilith. And sometimes I sort of question, what I'm seeing in front of me. I mean, Black Moon Lilith has moved very quickly. It was in Capricorn not so long ago. Now it's come backwards, and it's actually a long way off mean Black Moon Lilith. They are like a sign apart, and so I think some people have questioned, what are we looking at? And it is true Black Moon Lilith. And true Black Moon Lilith, does have a really weird cycle. But right now, Moon is trine Chiron. Looks as if it's trine true Black Moon Lilith. I sometimes sort of question this computer program. Is it really there? When you're dealing with a computer program, you should never believe it. You should never take it at face value. You should always consider the possibility that something is wrong, or you've entered the data wrong, or even that there's a bug in the program. So you never take what an astrology program tells you at face value. Always question it. I mean, it did take me quite a long time to find an alternative source for true Black Moon Lilith positions. I think I did find something in the end, and it did seem to confirm what my program was saying. So there is a grand trine involving Moon Chiron and true Black Moon Lilith. And so, Leo, that might be about you as an individual, and quite an extreme individual, with that Moon trine Chiron. There are things you want to do, and you want to break free from everything holding you back. And I do think that there are a lot of things holding you back, but I think you want to break free from it all. I think that's part of what you want to do, and I think you can, and maybe there's a good reason to do that as well, because I just don't think that other people are going to be very helpful today. And if you can do things in your own way, in a way which is very unique, and where you're in a position where you just don't care what other people's responses are, if you can get yourself into a position like that, then the day might have a different side. It might have an alternative set of possibilities, a set of possibilities which I think could be quite fortunate and also very creative. Virgo. Moon is not in Virgo yet. Well, if you're in the Americas, it goes into Virgo this evening. Certainly in the United States. Okay, if you're in Chile, for example, The moon goes into Virgo at, I think, just 21 minutes past midnight on Tuesday. So in Chile, no, the moon doesn't go into Virgo today, but certainly in the United States it does. This evening, pretty late in the evening, if you're on the East Coast, for example. So really, you've got the moon in Leo for most of the day, and the moon in Leo, it makes an opposition to Mercury. It's not the best place for the moon to be in, all things being equal, and so that might indicate that it's a day that is somewhat irritating, where things don't entirely go to plan. And, you might like them to go to plan. In fact, you probably do want them to go to plan, but things might just happen which you hadn't necessarily foreseen, and it's probably connected with the full moon and its aftermath. You have to deal with confusing information, and also your own responses. Your own emotional responses. As I think I said in my last video, but my video for the weekend, you don't quite know how you're going to respond to any situation, and your responses, might not be, straightforward, and you might be kind of thinking about your own complexities. Your own complexities as an individual. You don't see things in a way that is necessarily straightforward, and you have your own ideas, and at the same time, sometimes your own feelings can surprise you, and as a result of that, you think you've sorted everything out, you think everything is straightforward, everything is okay, but then something occurs to you. You just feel that something's not quite right, and then everything has to stop. And what is not quite right? I mean, it could be, it's almost, what's that sort of Star Wars thing, whatever. There is a disturbance in the Force. Yeah, maybe there is a disturbance in the Force. What does that mean? Maybe, Virgo, you're quite sensitive to just what's happening around the world. We are all connected at some level. If you believe that there's such a thing as a collective unconscious, we're not just individuals. We are part of the collective. That's to an extent what Uranus, Neptune, Pluto are about. These are collective planets, and being part of the collective, you at some level pick up on what's going on somewhere thousands of miles away. And it affects you. It affects your happiness, and I think that's good in a way, that you have compassion. You may not even be consciously compassionate. You may not go out of your way to be compassionate, but somehow you're compassionate anyway, because you can just feel it. Why are you not experiencing what another person is experiencing? If someone is miserable somewhere, they're in a sort of a bombed out house or being persecuted or whatever it is, you feel it. It's not just their problem; it's your problem, and that's often kind of what happens. When you read about a tragedy, that tragedy doesn't just it obviously directly affects the person who has been wounded, killed, lost family members, but then you pick up on it as well, and it kind of spoils your day. And it might be a bit like that, Virgo, but it's good. I mean, it's good. It's not good in one sense because it's a tragedy, but it's good that you are responding in the way you are responding, because it does say something about who you are, and the fact that you are capable of such compassion, you're capable of empathy. And so that is one way in which today could work, and or at least how you could feel it working. And a lot of the action today is taking place behind the scenes. I don't think that you're going to be in the mood for being direct, honest, upfront. I mean, you'd like to be, but I don't think you're in a mood because I think that there's a lot to think about, and you're certainly very much aware of your feelings, and yeah, you're aware of how disruptive those feelings can be, but perhaps that disruption is necessary, and that disruption shows that you really are a caring human being. Libra. The moon is in Leo, in late Leo, and all things being equal, moon in Leo, is not such a bad place for the moon to be if you're a Libra, and your natural inclination is to be thinking about other people, how you relate to other people, and I'm thinking more about people in a group rather than people as people on an individual level. And I think that overall, Libra, you're relatively sensitive. I think that you can really understand another person. You can understand what makes another person tick, and this ability to empathize perhaps allows you to get close to someone. I mean, okay, not too close, but you can get sort of close enough in order to understand what's happening, understand what is influencing another person. So that's good. Now, the moon, though, does make an opposition to Venus. It also makes an opposition to Mercury. And so the question is, how far do you go? How close can you get to certain people? And I think you have to know when to stop. You can take things too far. Other people can take things too far. And, there may come a point where other people are just being confusing, they're being difficult, and, they could, in the end, be appearing to sort of limit your freedom of action. I mean, that is a way of looking at things. I mean, an alternative approach might be to say, Libra, there are things you want to do. There are things you want to do in a way that is free flowing and very creative, and you're enjoying yourself. And then you're just aware of something else. You're aware that you're not alone, that you can't do things on your own, that you do have to consider outside opinions, and that is not necessarily something you want to do. So working out where you stop and another person starts might be quite important. And so perhaps think carefully about your various relationships and your various social ties, and if possible, try to work things through in sort of quite a methodical way. And what you don't want is to have a surprise, because with Moon opposition Venus, there could be a surprise. Someone just responds in a way that you don't fully appreciate or expect. I certainly wasn't expecting the dog to be going crazy. Obviously, the dog wants attention. I'm not going to give the dog attention right now, but perhaps the dog is calling time on this reading for Libra. Scorpio. There is quite a lot happening today, at least as far as Scorpio is concerned. I mean, we've got the moon moving through Leo, and the moon moving through Leo. Well, we've just had a full moon, and it's making an opposition aspects to Venus and Mercury, and those opposition aspects, may be having an influence on you. So, with that moon in Leo, as you move into the new week, I think that you understand that you need to make an impression. you need to be noticed. It's important that people understand, what you're doing and what you're about, and also it's important that you express your opinions, because if you don't express your opinions, people might assume that you're okay with things, and they'll just make decisions on your behalf, and that's absolutely not what you want to happen. And on the other hand, part of you just still does not want to get involved. The moon making opposition to Mercury, opposition to Venus, you'd rather be somewhere else. You'd rather be, doing things your own way. Perhaps you'd, rather be at home, rather be with your family, than having to, confront the world and its challenges. But perhaps it just can't be avoided, and the moon in Leo does make a square to Uranus, and this moon square Uranus might be important. You shouldn't forget that Uranus is slowing down. I mean, it's about to come to a standstill. It almost is at a standstill. I think it's on Wednesday, that's the 4th, that Uranus is stationary direct, and so when Uranus is stationary direct, It does say something about relationships, your relationships. I'll be talking about that in a couple of days' time. But with the moon making a square to Uranus, it just might occur to you that there are people out there who are slowing you down, or if not slowing you down, they may be disrupting you. You can't entirely predict what other people are going to do, what they're going to say, what their influence is going to be, and that could be a real drag on you. But maybe you need it. I said there's quite a lot going on today, and you shouldn't assume that you've got everything sorted out, that there are no questions left to be answered, and that moon square Uranus may be about just something happening which reminds you that you need to refocus, that you need to do things in a different way. And it could be a surprise. And if someone else springs a surprise on you, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, maybe they didn't mean to spring a surprise, but they do. But if that does happen, don't get upset about it, and don't blame anyone for anything. It's all a natural process, and there's something that has to shift. And maybe that moon square Uranus is, it's all part of the full moon. The full moon is about understanding, and things are becoming clear, and if something becomes clear to you, you shouldn't be blaming anyone for it, and instead you should be seeing it as a good thing. It gives you an opportunity to not just see the truth, but also to be able to act on the truth. And today, the sun is, today, Mars is, halfway between the Sun and Pluto. In fact, Mars is conjunct the Sun-Pluto midpoint. Mars is your ruler. I mean, I think that aspect does give you a certain amount of strength and determination. And, with that strength and determination, I do believe that, you can make your position clear. And not everyone is going to appreciate that. But if you are clear and you hold your ground, but if you also accept other people, you accept other people's viewpoints. So you don't want to be an extremist about this, but if you can be clear about who you are and what you want, I think in the end you will get your way. But you don't want to get your way 100%, because if you get your way 100%, then that could create unpleasantness, and that would be, I think, unnecessary. Sagittarius. Well, you might say that you should be, enjoying the moon in Leo, while it's in Leo, because once the moon moves into Virgo, it might be this evening if you're in the Americas, tomorrow if you're elsewhere. Once the moon moves into Virgo, that means that that's a personal planet has moved out of the far sign, moved into Virgo. That's different. Moon in Virgo represents a different set of challenges. But maybe with this moon in Leo, in late Leo, and you just had a full moon, this could have been a time where you were starting to understand things. Things were clarifying, and that's kind of what you wanted. Because I think recently, for many Sagittarians, there has been a lack of clarity. You weren't quite sure what you were supposed to be doing, and with the moon in Leo, perhaps certain things were becoming clearer. And the moon in Leo, it's making a trine to Chiron. It's also making a trine to true Black Moon Lilith. I say true Black Moon Lilith. Mean Black Moon Lilith is going to be a long way from true Black Moon Lilith. I think they're almost a sign apart at the moment. So Moon making trines to true Black Moon Lilith and Chiron. In other words, we've got a grand trine in fire signs. Okay, it's not involving the main planets, but it's perhaps saying something about how you can benefit from what's going on. I think that it's quite inspiring. Moon in a fire sign, linking to Chiron and true Black Moon Lilith. You may have an opportunity to just get in touch with something that you've been trying to get in touch with, but you just haven't been successful. But now it's starting to make sense, and it's not just about that. It's also about the fact that you do have a concept of your own generation. Whatever your generation is, it doesn't matter what your generation is. It doesn't matter when you were born. But you have you have an idea about what your generation is all about, where you fit in. And it's not immediately obvious, but if you just think about it, you feel about it, you may just have a certain comfort about the time you were born, whenever you were born. And so you can see where you are in the conveyor belt. Unfortunately, life is a bit of a conveyor belt, isn't it? We have our time on the conveyor belt, and then in the end, I'm afraid we fall off the conveyor belt. It just happens. But you feel that, and so that can give you a sense of placement, a sense of placement that perhaps in the recent past has been lacking, and now with the moon in Leo, there's a lot of things you are discovering. Not all of it is easy. We've just had a full moon, and the moon is making an opposition to Venus and Mercury. So it's not always easy. And there may be things going on that are still confusing. They might even be upsetting. But at least you're understanding how it's all working, how it's all progressing. And so Sagittarius, you could say it's a complicated day. I mean, it's not a simple day where everything is just easy and got nice, neat compartments. I think the best way of dealing with today is to deal with it at quite a high level. And to have quite sort of deep thoughts about where you're going. Again, not just where you are going, but perhaps where your generation is going, and perhaps what your generation represents. And then the moon will move into Virgo, may move into Virgo this evening, and that does create a change. And it's the moon will move into an earth sign, and perhaps as the moon moves into Virgo, you have a final chance not a final chance, you're always going to have chances, but you're going to have a chance to really start to not just bring things together, but bring things together in a practical way. And I will be talking about that when I do your horoscope for tomorrow, for Tuesday. Capricorn. The Sun is making a semisquare aspect to Saturn. So it's you, Saturn. You may be the one who is holding things up, and that's always a question, isn't it? I talk about what other people might be experiencing, and I say that someone might be a problem, someone might be holding things up, someone might be raising objections, but that person could be you. And that's not a good or a bad thing. And this is perhaps the nature of Saturn, being your ruler, and you have a responsibility here, and your role perhaps is to see things in a different way. I mean, perhaps the fact that you have Saturn as your ruler, you have a ruler of time as your ruler. Saturn is, of course, a chronocrator, and so you have just an understanding of the way things just naturally unfold. And so when you hear people make suggestions, when people have ideas, you respond in a kind of a different way. You don't just look at things in the here and now. You can look at the broad picture, and because of that, Capricorn, you might sometimes come over as being quite difficult. You have this different view, and what you're expressing is responsibility, and it's good that you're able to be responsible. And with the Sun semisquare Saturn, the advantage of it is that you can make people stop and think. And also, Sun is quite weak at the moment. The Sun is in Aquarius, in a sign of its detriment, and so that might be about people who are weak, who, like it or not, might be prepared to listen to you. So if you give advice, I think that your advice, it might not be fully appreciated, but it will make a difference, and it can encourage people to stop what they're doing, maybe to delay, maybe to just cancel altogether. But you have to realize that you are powerful, and with power comes a degree of responsibility. So if you are in a position of power, even if it's just a short-term position, someone asking you for advice, do be aware of that responsibility. Now, there is a different side to the day. Okay, maybe it's related, but I think that overall, your ability to get on with people, to get noticed, to have an impact is pretty strong. I think that your words carry a lot of weight, and there's something about you that is quite attractive, and people do appreciate your presence. Well, they kind of appreciate your presence until you start to act, until you start to give your opinion. Maybe when you give people your opinion, they don't really appreciate it so much, because you're quite capable at the moment of telling people what they don't want to hear. On the other hand, Capricorn, I think that you have the capacity to change your message to fit the audience. And perhaps that's what you need to think about. So if you're giving, for example, if you're giving someone some advice or maybe some bad news, you don't have to necessarily tell it as it is. You can sort of ever so slightly adjust your message, and in that way you will make the right kind of impression. But you are overall pretty powerful and intense at the moment, and perhaps that intensity is going to be boosted by the fact that we've got a kind of a rather interesting grand trine in fire signs today, which easy to miss, but it's there. Moon trine Chiron and trine true Black Moon Lilith, not trine mean Black Moon Lilith. I think that mean Black Moon Lilith is almost a sign away from a true Black Moon Lilith at the moment. But that this grand trine is there, and perhaps you're able to use it. And I think it just does add to your power, because I think at the moment you are quite powerful, and I think that people are going to listen to you, and you will have an influence. You can make things happen, and you can more importantly make things not happen if you feel that it's not a good idea. But that goes back to what I was saying. I think it's important that you not just appreciate your power, but you also have a strong sense of responsibility and proportion. Aquarius. Well, I was just doing the horoscope for Capricorn, and of course one of the things that you and Capricorn have in common is that you both have Saturn as your ruling planet. And at the moment, Saturn is making a semi-square to the Sun. So this semi-square to the Sun, the question is, how does it work? Is it about you feeling down? Sun in Aquarius, semi-square Saturn, is something holding you up? It's possible. That is a way of looking at it. I mean, you could say, the Sun is in Aquarius. You've got all of these Aquarius planets. And, they're ready to go. They're ready to make a big impact. And then Saturn comes along and says, you can't do that. It's just not possible. And what's Saturn's issue? Well, Saturn's issue could be money. You're thinking, well, can this be done? Can you afford it? So that is a way it could work. You feeling that you have to be careful with money. Some of the things that you want to do can't be done because they're too expensive. Or you've got to wait. You've got to save. That is a way of looking at it. There is another way of looking at it. And you could say, well, Saturn is you. The Sun might be another person. And so Sun square Saturn, you could have a big influence on another person. Remember that the Sun is in Aquarius. It's in its detriment, and it's under pressure, and it's semi-square Saturn, and so that Sun in Aquarius could represent someone who is quite reliant on you, almost dependent, and they certainly are deferring to your better judgment. And so, what do you do in that kind of position? And you can, in certain situations, be overwhelming. And you might not regard yourself as being overwhelming, but you can be. So in sort of any sort of one-to-one relationship, think very carefully about how you are behaving, how you are treating another person. And be aware. I think you can be aware. I mean, Saturn is in Pisces. Saturn is in a water sign. So you're certainly capable of that level of sensitivity, but you might just miss it. But being insensitive, I think it would be unnecessary, to be honest. I think, Aquarius, if you try very, very hard to turn on the charm and to sort of turn on the sensitivity, I mean, maybe it's like that. It's like if you've got a metal detector. I did have a metal detector. I don't know what the point of metal detectors are. You never find anything. But if you have a metal detector, you can change the sensitivity. And if you increase the sensitivity, you'll be picking up all sorts of things, everything. That's a problem with it if you increase the sensitivity. And so you've got a dial. And so, maybe it's like with you. You can turn on your own sensitivity. You've got a dial. And maybe you start the day with the dial turned to nearly zero. But if you increase the dial, obviously you don't want to be too sensitive, but you can be as sensitive as you want. You can really, appreciate other people's emotions and what people are experiencing, what people are worried about. It's all possible if you make the effort, if you want to make the effort. And I think it's probably worth having that dial turned up quite high, because at the moment, Aquarius, you're actually capable of coming over as actually being quite charming and sympathetic, kind of the opposite of what I was saying. Yeah, there is the capacity here, Sagittarius, Aquarius, for you to be very harsh. You could be very harsh, but I don't think you need to be very harsh. And if you do give your sensitivity a boost, if you really try to understand what other people are thinking, what they're feeling, what they're worried about, then I think that can make all the difference. And your ability to do well in social situations, well, it's up to you. I mean, you could do really badly if you just want to be completely stubborn. But if you make the effort, you can just really get on with people. People can really, enjoy your presence, and you can even come over as being, quite a caring person, even if you don't feel particularly caring. So there's a huge amount of choice here. And I think, it's a time to sort of, see what you can do. So, I talked about the fact that, you could be harsh. And yeah, you can be harsh. And maybe it's necessary to be harsh. But maybe at the same time, you can bring people down to earth, but bring people down to earth in the nicest of ways. So I think that, yeah, it's up to you. And don't forget, of course, Moon is in Leo. It's in your opposite sign. So you just continue to have this capacity to deal with people. And the question is, can you be bothered? And I hope that you can be bothered. Pisces. Right now, Pisces, I don't think it's a day when things are necessarily it's completely easy, completely straightforward. I think that there are a few complications to deal with. I mean, you kind of want things to be straightforward, and as far as you're concerned, they should be straightforward. I mean, why not? But you're finding that some of the details are really quite difficult. I mean, they should be really easy. I mean, it just should be easy logically, but it's not. And you might just find that things are just cropping up that you weren't expecting, that you hadn't planned for, that you don't fully understand, and it may be things going on in your own mind, in your own emotional world. And so as soon as you start to engage, the more work you put into something, the more effort you put into something, just the more complicated it becomes. And I'm not quite sure what that means, but I suspect you have to start to think about those complications, because you just wanted things to be straightforward, just too straightforward. And so before making decisions, before embarking on huge amounts of work, be honest with yourself, and be honest with yourself as far as your own feelings are concerned, because I think that your own feelings are sort of more powerful than you realize, and perhaps it's because feelings have been hidden, and feelings can manifest, yes, in the strangest of ways. And at the same time, Pisces, you're quite sensitive to just what's going on around you, around the world, how people relate to one another, in a collective way. And indeed, you might be just aware of these quite heavy, dramatic forces at work. I mean, we're all aware of it to some extent, but I think Pisces, you seem to be, be particularly aware of it. There are some things that going on that you understand on a sort of intuitive, emotional level. You don't understand them in a way that you can talk about them, but you just know it's there. And you might even have a concept of your own role, how you should be dealing with it all, what you're here for. And if you're honest about your fundamental destiny, then that is surely a good thing. But the way what you're supposed to do and what you think you should do may be two rather different things. But I just think it is a complicated day. But I don't think it's a day when necessarily a huge amount of things are going to be happening. I just think it's more your perceptions, and also your perceptions of what other people are going through. Other people seem to be distracted. Perhaps they're worrying about the world as well, and it's difficult. And but again, it's not particularly difficult for you. You just understand that we are living in complicated times, and perhaps your role is to bring it all together. I mean, one aspect we have is a semisquare between the Sun and Saturn, and Saturn is still moving through Pisces. What's it to do? It's got just under a fortnight before Saturn moves into Aries. But while Saturn is in Pisces, I think that you have the opportunity to get things together and maybe if you've got worries and fears, or if indeed if other people have got worries and fears, now is a great time with this Sun semi-square Saturn to really start to understand what's going on, what is all happening. And with your Pisces sensitivity, I think that you can start to get to grips with the problem, and in the end, perhaps feel more secure. I mean, I think you are secure, but I think you can feel even more secure, and it's just it's all about dealing with sort of a swirl of confusion and chaos and information, and it's all whirling around you. And that Sun semi-square Saturn can perhaps harness it all, or at least stabilize it. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. So now I want to look at today from a different perspective, and that perspective is, of course, the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Monday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 3, which is difficulty at the beginning. Now, this is a strange hexagram because, the question is, where does it all lead? It doesn't really say. It just says there's a difficulty at the beginning. It doesn't say there's going to be a difficulty at the end. It just says it's going to start in a problematic way. And this hexagram doesn't move. No moving lines. And of course, this is a hexagram for Monday. And Monday is the first day of the week. It's also the second day of February. It seems to me that the week and the month start in a way that is difficult. And that says absolutely nothing about how they're going to end. And I think that there's an implied optimism to this hexagram. It's kind of indicating that even though things are bad, they're not going to get any worse, not necessarily. And that just because something is hard to begin with doesn't mean it's going to end that way. And there's also an implication, perhaps, that support is available. In fact, Greg Winkup, in his translation of I Ching, he doesn't call this hexagram difficulty at the beginning. I think he calls it gathering support. So he gives it a sort of quite an optimistic spin. It is a time to be gathering support. So if we're not happy about the way things are, it doesn't mean that that's the way things always have to be. Now, there is a nuclear hexagram here, because I look at the nuclear hexagram if we don't have any moving lines, and the nuclear hexagram is hexagram number 23, which is splitting apart. Now, that's not to say that things are splitting apart. It's more telling us what the underlying picture is. And I'm thinking this difficulty at the beginning, okay, it might say something about what you are struggling with at the moment, but I think it's also saying something about the world. And people just are expecting, I know that, I'm coming from a perspective of looking at the news, and people are expecting Monday to be horrible, really horrible, in terms of the markets, in terms of, if you're in the US, the government shutdown. Of course, the government shutdown affects everyone because it affects the overall markets in terms of, just the chaos the world is in. Of course, we've got the Epstein files. I'm sure we'll be hearing more and more about them. And so it all seems really bad. Bad start to the month, bad start to the week, difficulty at the beginning. I just get the feeling, and particularly as there are no moving lines, we do get a feeling that things are splitting apart, but with no action. And difficulty at the beginning means that potentially that things aren't actually going anywhere. So if you are feeling very negative today, where is it going? Where is this negativity going? And I don't think it's necessarily going anywhere. And so, in fact, I think this I Ching is actually quite positive. So if you are worried about the new week, the new month, perhaps you shouldn't be, because it's not necessarily going to get any worse. Yeah, we've got this underlying picture of splitting apart, but we knew that already. And so you don't don't jump to conclusions just because something at the beginning is really difficult, because that's not necessarily the way it's going to end. And I want to finish with Jeffrey Epstein. And he just goes on. We've just had the latest release of files. And I tried to work out the time for when the files were released. I didn't really do a good job on that. So so this release. So I haven't been reading a lot about it. But on last Friday, which would have been the 30th, there was this huge release of files. Was it 3 million files were released? And a lot of people were mentioned. I mean, you've got I don't know, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew. Of course, always Prince Andrew gets mentioned. So we also thought, we did think that Bill Gates would get mentioned. That's perhaps not a surprise, although the allegation against Bill Gates is. I don't know. I mean, it is an extraordinary allegation. And so this release, it's quite likely to have an impact, not beyond the files. I mean, Trump is probably going to want to draw attention away from it and perhaps create a crisis somewhere else because he wants to avoid the attention of this. Again, we've got allegations against Trump going back decades, and I don't know how he's going to manage it, and no one's happy about it. And so as far as when the release happened, so the release, let's just here's. I mean, I don't think I got the time right, but I've just gone for somewhere in the afternoon on Friday. So this is a broad chart of the release. And it's kind of interesting that the release happened when the moon was, in the middle of Cancer, around 13 Cancer. Because the United States has its sun at 13 Cancer, so it perhaps has an impact on the United States and what it thinks about itself, and perhaps the elites as well. So there's nothing. I don't think that this release in itself is particularly dramatic. Although, I mean, in terms of astrology, although notice that Neptune has just gone into Aries. So now that Neptune is in Aries, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? I mean, Neptune and Aries, creates all types of confusion. It's maybe Neptune and Aries is like opening sort of Pandora's box. Everything is now running around. It's all over the place, and what is it? What is it all about? So let me start by just comparing that with the United States' chart. I mean, that's perhaps what we should start by thinking about before we look at Epstein. And so here's the United States' chart, and so there's the United States' sun, and the moon is on the United States' sun, and so that does sort of help stir things up. And the United States, it's got a Sun Jupiter conjunction, and so there's a Moon Jupiter conjunction at the time of release. That perhaps is interesting. Moon conjunct Jupiter. Something is all, we think about Moon and Jupiter conjunction in Cancer as something very positive, but something is definitely being released. It's coming out. It's coming into the public domain, and it is a time when the United States, of course, is undermined. People ask questions about it, and look at how Neptune is now on the United States' IC, the lowest point in the chart. And so with Neptune it's kind of causing chaos sort of left, right, and centre. The country does not seem to be comfortable with itself. Of course, we have sort of big demonstrations against ICE over the weekend. I saw pictures in Minneapolis. The streets are just full of, completely, completely full. So there are certainly issues here, and the Epstein thing is not helping. And we shouldn't forget that Uranus is about to go stationary at 27, around 27, 28 Taurus. So that stationary Uranus is causing real problems for the US, I think. Well, okay, firstly, it's trine Pluto. So Uranus trine Pluto, the United States had its Pluto return quite recently, but Uranus is bringing it all up, and it's quite a revolutionary energy. And Uranus, the Pluto return is about division, and I don't think the Pluto return has entirely finished. I think we're still seeing the after effects, and clearly it's a society that is in a state of change, and Uranus is also square the United States' moon. So the moon is the United States' moon, I think, is at 2710 Aquarius. Well, it's actually more than that, because I have a feeling that if you look at the United States' chart, you see, the United States, it's not shown in the bi-wheel, but the United States has an exact moon opposition between the moon and true black moon Lilith. So what that means is that Uranus is hitting the moon black moon Lilith opposition, and I think that this really says a lot about Epstein. I think that's perhaps what it's really saying. And black moon Lilith is something really dark, which is coming to the fore. I mean, it's always been there because the United States has that moon opposition, true black moon Lilith, but now it's happening. And so Uranus is about to go stationary direct. So that is certainly something to be watched. But really, it's all about Epstein, isn't it? And here is Epstein's chart. And I was thinking about Epstein. This man has had such a huge influence, and it almost seems to be deliberate. It's almost like supernatural. I don't know what you think. It's like a film. It's like a film, really, isn't it? Where the devil comes. The kind of film the devil comes down to earth, and the devil is here, and the devil is charming and charismatic, and I don't know how charismatic he really was, but I mean, to some people he was charismatic, and so Epstein is almost like an entity. He's there for a purpose. He's been allowed to operate for a reason, and it's all very well to say, "Oh, Epstein is evil," but it doesn't help. May he rot in hell. It's a good thing he hanged himself. All that kind of stuff, or maybe someone else hanged him. Whatever. But it's almost like, okay, if he's not the devil, then he's kind of put here for a purpose. He has his own destiny. He's there to perhaps expose the fault lines in American society. He's perhaps there to provoke the elite, perhaps to hasten the demise of the elite, to make people sort of ask questions. There is a real horror film side to the Epstein saga, and so here is his chart. Jeffrey Epstein, that Venus-Mars conjunction totally personifies Venus-Mars. I mean, someone who is, I don't know with Epstein. Does one see? I just don't know with Epstein. Does one see Epstein as just an individual who messed up, was completely immoral? I mean, you could do that. Or do you see him as someone who is a kind of a collective entity? He was just put here for a purpose. Maybe it's both, but I think we should perhaps see him as a collective entity. And his Venus-Mars conjunction was his charm, his skill, his ability. Obviously he was intelligent, but and is also his obsession. I mean, Venus-Mars is a conjunction which is about sexuality and sex. He was obsessed with sex. That was what it was, all about. Apparently obsessed with sex in a self-destructive kind of way, but also, he was systematically acting in a way to compromise a great chunk of the elite. And he's done a fantastic job. So, who takes us back to the question of, who is the gainer, who benefited from the release of the Epstein files, from the scandal following them? Well, he benefited, and he's not. He's supposed to be dead, but he's not dead. He doesn't seem to be dead at all. And it seems that Epstein's horoscope is still in operation. So if you look at what was happening to Epstein at the time of the release of the files, there are a couple of things that certainly are worth noting. So if we've got an exact time for Epstein, and he's got 12 degrees, and his ascendant is at 12 degrees Capricorn. So on Friday afternoon, the moon was at around 13 Capricorn. So on Friday afternoon, the moon crossed his descendant. So perhaps that puts some new sort of focus on him. And remember, he's dead. No one can do that. It's like I don't know if you've watched a film, Return of Dr. Phibes with Vincent Price, and he says at the end, Vincent Price playing Dr. Phibes, he says something like, "You can't kill me because I'm already dead." And I think that seems to be what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein. And so the moon is crossing his descendant, and Neptune, there's Neptune. Neptune was at 0 degrees 7 minutes Aries, and Epstein's sun is at 0 degrees 7 minutes Aquarius. So he had an exact Neptune exactly sextile his sun, and so from wherever he is, I mean, he does seem to be enjoying himself. That seems to be the feeling I get, and I really must emphasize that his horoscope is still very much in operation. Pluto is moved away from his sun, but it's still pretty close. It's less than 4 degrees away. So that's Jeffrey Epstein. And things are definitely still happening for him. Oh, one thing about Jeffrey Epstein, his solar return. Your solar returns apparently continue after you're dead. You can still do a solar return for Epstein after he's dead. So here is his solar return for his last birthday, which was his birthday was on January the 19th. So in his solar return, he's got Jupiter on the midheaven. I mean, that's very good for your work, for your career, getting noticed. And he seems to be living up to that Jupiter on the midheaven. And he's got Chiron on the descendant. And I'm not quite sure how that's working, but one thing about this solar return is the moon. I mean, if you look at the moon can give us ideas about timing, and the moon is moving towards a square of Uranus. Now, normally I would have said, okay, the moon is 12 degrees away. 11.5 degrees away from the square of Uranus. Now, normally I would have said that's probably 11.5 months. I mean, maybe something will happen in a couple of weeks before his next birthday, but it might be days. And it was pretty much that moon square Uranus, 11.5 days. That takes us to this weekend. So 11.5 days ago, Epstein had his birthday, and now 11.5 days later we had this sort of revelation. So I would have said that Jeffrey Epstein's solar return is still working. Look, he had Mars on his IC, Chiron. In fact, there was a Mars Chiron, Jupiter T square, all on his midheaven. So that does seem to be working. And then we've got the people who are being sort of talked about. I mean, with Bill Gates, the revelation is the story. I mean, you can read it up, you can check it for yourself, but it's all about the allegation about sort of antibiotics and sexually transmitted diseases and so forth. You can read it, you can check it for yourself. But here's Bill Gates's chart. Of course, whatever the allegations were, I should make it clear that Bill Gates has completely denied them. But with Bill Gates. Bill Gates was really sort of treated as someone who was, completely wonderful. Everyone thought Bill Gates was great, in the run up to the, the .com boom, always nice person, humanitarian, everything else about him. And, now his sort of reputation has been sort of completely fractured. And you can certainly see the darkness in Bill Gates's chart, Okay, there's nothing wrong with being a Scorpio, but it's that Venus conjunct Saturn, which is of concern. And Venus conjunct Saturn can work in many different ways. It can be someone who is perhaps shy, someone who finds it difficult to relate. I mean, that is a way of looking at it. But Venus conjunct Saturn can be about someone who treats women badly, who has certainly if it's in a male chart, perhaps there is an issue about him expressing his emotion. Venus conjunct Saturn is an aspect that can be connected with prostitution. That makes sense because Venus is a planet of love, but it's connected with Saturn. It's a love which is not entirely natural. I mean, that's how one can see it. If you look at Reinhold Ebertin in Combination of Stellar Influences, when he talks about Venus Saturn, he talks about the sociological correspondences of Venus-Saturn. And Reinhold Ebertin, in Combination of Stellar Influences, a book that I would always recommend that you have, he says, lonely people inspired by a great sense of duty. Oh, that's good. But also their opposite types, such as irresponsible and unfaithful people. Also prostitutes and those who exploit prostitution unscrupulously. So that Venus-Saturn is not necessarily very healthy, and that may say something about his relationships and his attitudes to certain women in his life. And so it's not necessarily helpful, and I think it is a lot about what's going on. Also, Moon opposition Mars. We don't really see that Moon opposition Mars. Now, I've looked at Gates's chart before, and I said, well, that Moon opposition Mars, may say something about his wife, his former wife, who they've divorced now. But the Moon opposition Mars may represent an angry woman, and that Venus conjunct Saturn, doesn't help. And that Moon opposition Mars is right across his midheaven. And in terms of his solar arc directions, so with solar arc directions, so Bill Gates has just turned 70. So with his solar arc directions, we are moving everything, we're moving everything about 70 degrees. So here are his solar arc directions. So his sun has directed to about 16 Capricorn. And so if we do the... If we look at how the solar arc directed planets are affecting his natal chart, you can see there's his Venus Saturn conjunction, which is here in Scorpio. But you move that conjunction 70 degrees, and this Venus Saturn conjunction is just coming up to the beginning of beginning of Aquarius. So there's Venus, directed Venus is at 1 degree 22 Aquarius, directed Saturn is at 2 degrees 44 Aquarius. So, the midpoint would be, I don't know, something like, the midpoint would be about 2 degrees Aquarius. And there is his Uranus. So as his Venus-Saturn, his solar arc directed Venus-Saturn conjunction is moving towards the opposition of his natal Uranus. And that's exactly when we've got this big story coming out with the Epstein files, with I don't know, the allegation about the Russian prostitute and the antibiotics and the sexually transmitted diseases, and it's all happening, and it's going to be a bit difficult for him to get over that, even if he has completely denied it. And additionally, look at his solar arc directed moon opposition Mars. So there's his moon-Mars opposition. We move this 70 degrees, and his moon-Mars opposition is coming onto his nodal axis. So as the moon crosses his south node, as Mars has already crossed his north node, that's when this revelation comes out. And clearly, it's quite devastating. So other people impacted. There are lots of other people, but of course Prince Andrew. It's difficult to know quite with Prince Andrew what to look for. Here's Prince Andrew's horoscope. What is interesting about Prince Andrew is he's got this exact Venus-Mars conjunction. Now, the thing about this Venus-Mars conjunction is 27, 28 Capricorn. Now that Venus-Mars conjunction certainly says something about his obsession with sex. And of course, Epstein had a Venus-Mars conjunction as well. And there's this picture of him leaning over some girl lying on her back. We don't see her face. It's not the kind of picture that Prince Andrew wants to have. Things do move from bad to worse for him. But the thing about that Venus-Mars conjunction and why it might be relatively important is the fact that we had a new moon quite recently, and so the new moon. Just remind myself of where that new moon was. The new moon was on the 18th of January, and that new moon was at 28:44 Capricorn. In other words, that new moon was exactly on Prince Andrew's Venus and very close to his Mars. So he had a new moon on his Venus-Mars. And so new moon on his Venus-Mars, and a couple of weeks later, just before the full moon, you had all the Epstein files being released. So I'm thinking, given the fact that the new moon was on his Venus-Mars conjunction, he is really feeling the that impact of his past behavior, and again, one wonders why. But that's probably the most important thing going on here. I don't know if there are any transits affecting Prince Andrew. I did look. I didn't find anything particularly spectacular. The Prince Andrew has his descendant at 1135 Aquarius, and so the sun is conjunct his descendant. So that's not. It's not necessarily such a big deal, but it does bring him into focus again. And remembering, with Prince Andrew, look at Uranus. Uranus is at 27 degrees 28 Taurus. So Uranus is about to go stationary direct on his Mars and then on his Venus. Now you think it's a trine, so it should be fortunate, but maybe Uranus. I think one has to be careful with Prince Andrew, because maybe he's just had too much. I don't know. It's perhaps a good thing that his access to firearms. I think it's been restricted. I think that would be a good thing. He must be under a huge amount of pressure, and so with Uranus, trine his Mars, going stationary direct, trine his Mars, stationary direct, trine his Venus. I think maybe we have to be careful with Prince Andrew, because we don't know what he's going to do, and because things must be pretty bad for him, at the moment. And notice how Saturn has just gone across his south node, so it's all coming home for him. But I think the new moon on his Venus-Mars conjunction is particularly significant. And then there is the President of the United States, who has also been mentioned a huge amount of times, apparently. Again, I haven't been following this too much. So here's Trump's chart, and so as far as what he was feeling at the time of the release, well, it's true that Uranus is going stationary direct. So Uranus is quite close to his midheaven, but it's going stationary direct, square his own Mars. And so if he's got Uranus square his Mars, it's like he might respond to this in a way that is dramatic, and indeed he might respond to this in a way that might want to draw attention away from it. So the problem here would be that he might, for example, create a crisis in some other part of the world, another part of the world, and for example Iran or whatever. You do what you have to do to take the attention off you. So there is perhaps some danger that he might respond like that. I don't know if I see anything particularly any transit that's particularly close, particularly dramatic. I'm sure there is one. I just seem to have missed it. So those are a few people impacted by Epstein. Certainly, it's a situation that just goes on, and I think it's likely that I'll be talking more about it. But as far as Epstein is concerned, his horoscope is alive and well, and one wonders what he is all about. Is it just about a flawed individual, or is it just about something collective, something like that was put on the planet to create a reaction, to draw the elites into a huge scandal which has got some kind of universal purpose that right now we might not be fully aware of. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.